everybody to this this event. This is the launch of the BCS Digital Divide specialist group. It's really exciting to get this group launched and to start formalizing it, because as we've just been reflecting, this has been a really exciting year of trying to do things differently at BCS and trying to be more action focused and more strategic about how to affect change in longer term, to make sure that our commitments and our making IT good for society really come to life, and we live those values. It's seemingly very timely as well, with a number of government consultations and government policies coming out, namely the Levelling Up White Paper and other areas around skills and education, all focusing towards digital skills, digital education, computer science, AI and cyber, to name a few. So we are in a really great place to be able to capitalize on that and look to things like the next general election, how we influence party political manifestos to be committing to those things, but also looking towards 2030 and how we can support and facilitate the closing of the digital divide by then. So it's been an interesting and exciting and innovative year, actually, trying to change BCS's ways of working. And as many of you will know, BCS is quite an unwieldy beast at times, which we can love and hate in equal measure sometimes. But it is something that is to be cherished and to be nurtured, I think. And this is a particularly exciting project that we've been able to nurture. And over the past year, we've been really focused on making sure that we are fit and ready to make a sustained impact on this. So that has meant working with our governance functions. It's meant working with our different departments across the organization to make sure that the digital divide is absolutely front and center of our work. It's things like making sure that in communications to all of our specialist and regional groups, that they are expected to develop actions and events that are focused on the digital divide, and to report back on how they're doing it. So we're directing our members to be taking action that way, but also implementing lines of responsibility and accountability. So we have Julia Adamson here, who is the Director of Education, and Julia is the strategic lead for tackling the digital divide. And I know that we've got, I've seen John Higgins' name, so we've got the President in the call, who has also been a great champion for this work, and I believe will continue to do so. So having kind of said and explained that, the idea for the next hour are to hand over, or I'll be handing over to the panelists, to Freddie and Dave as chair and vice chair of the new specialist group, to discuss the kind of journey so far. And then we're going to be passing on to Christy Tanaka, who is the inclusion officer of the new specialist group, to talk about what inclusion means in the digital divide space. And then we're going to move into a bit of a panel discussion with a kind of Q&A. So to try and make this run as smoothly as possible, we're asking that you direct your questions into the chat, or put your hands up when we get to that, and then I can facilitate that, hopefully. And then we will wrap up with some summaries and close and a kind of call to action, and that's it. So I will hand over to Freddie to take it from there.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been a journey to get to this point. Let's do a bit of introduction first. So my name is Freddie Quack. My day job, I'm Chief Technology Officer at Times Higher Education. But more importantly, I've been a BCS member for more than 30 years. So this is the first time that I'm getting really actively involved with the BCS, and for a long time. So if you see in front of us here, this topic that I talked to the BCS about for nearly a year, I was in a position of being very frustrated, thinking, what can BCS do? What should BCS do? Why is BCS not doing something? And then I realized that actually it's a member-led organization. Actually, I can do something. And then this is where I started the journey. And now I want to hand over to Dave to do a bit of introduction. Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Freddie. Yeah, so like Freddie, I have a day job which is not entirely related to BCS, but it's sort of, I'm a software engineer in my day job. But again, like Freddie, I'm not sure I'd say I felt frustration, but during lockdown, I spotted this need, and for me, the move into this area of digital poverty was really about social isolation that I was perceiving for me and for others, and I was backed up by having internet, digital skills, the ability, the money, all that kind of stuff to deal with that first stage of lockdown where nobody knew what was going on. But it became clear to me that there's many people who didn't have that, who were feeling more socially isolated. So that for me was that was two things. That was what led me into digital poverty, but it was also what led me to consider that the way to tackle this is going to be largely based on collaboration, because BCS does not have as one of its specialist areas social isolation. That's not what BCS is for. That's not what BCS is about. So that's how I came into this. But yeah, so as Freddie's noted there, I've done a couple of talks. I've done a couple of written a couple of things on digital poverty, and I came out the other side of that social isolation thing into looking at the numbers, and we'll talk more about the numbers I think later on. But so that's how I'm got involved in this space. So in addition to being involved with this group, I'm also a member of BCS Council. I'm also a member of BCS Trustee Board, and I'm also on the committee of the Pride SG. And with those roles, I think that gives me a nice key into seeing how collaboration is going to work, seeing that collaboration is going to have to be a thing that we use to solve all the issues that we see here.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm the chair of this SG, and Dave is the deputy chair. Let us hear also from Julia. Julia is our BCS executive sponsor. Over to you.
Hi, Freddie, and hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really proud to be the BCS exec sponsor for this Digital Divide specialist group. In my day job, I'm the Director of Education, so this is absolutely in my remit. My work includes computing at school, network of computing educators, so upskilling and supporting those teachers in every school to give every child that amazing start, that great foundation in a computing and digital education. I'm also part of the senior leadership team of the National Centre for Computing Education, which is a large DFE funded initiative around CPD for computing education too. I'm really excited about harnessing the power of BCS membership. I'm really sort of bringing us all together to see what we can do to play our part in closing the digital divide sustainably, long term, together. So thanks, Freddie. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you. And then if I may introduce Christy Tanaka, who's also one of the panelists. Christy, over to you.
Thank you, Freddie. I'm Christy Tanaka. I am the Inclusion Officer for the BCS Digital Divide Specialist Group. I also wear another BCS hat. I'm the Membership Secretary for BCS Women. Have been a member for many years, and this is the first time I've actually taken on a committee role, so really excited to be able to also stretch my wings into the Digital Divide group. My day job is working in the NHS, so seeing firsthand what digital transformation combined with clinical priorities and population health challenges are within health and care. And I guess my journey started in the advocacy and awareness space, working in social and environmental issues, and it was pre-dot-com boom. So it was a very different world before the consumerization of technology exploded onto the scene. You had then, as you do now, still digital transformation driving a lot of these changes. And what it's done is kind of brought full circle to the challenges then. So we're talking over 20 years. I've been in the business, if you like, working in these industries that overlap each other because of the technology, that it's all about people. And so I'm really pleased and very privileged to be part of this group and to serve the BCS members and the people that look to the BCS for advice and guidance.
Thank you, Christy. So that completes the introduction of the panelists. I just want to also take this opportunity to call out a few people from the BCS and also the committee who is really at the forefront of helping to make this happen. So welcome Analdis. Thank you for joining us. She's the BCS policy manager behind the scenes. She's done tons of work to help us to get to this point. I also would like to give a shout out to Mark West. Mark, thank you for being here. He's been instrumental in all the Basecamp noises or good stuff that you have come across. So thank you to Mark. But more importantly, you'll see here in this slide, we have 3 BCS presidents involved. Before John Higgins, we have Rebecca George, and now John Higgins will be handing over to Mayam Prakash. Right, we've already done 2 BCS in the past 12 months. It's taken us 12 months to get to this point. There's the establishment of the Digital Poverty Alliance. I know of at least 5 of us that is already part of that. I'm sure there's many more, and I encourage many more. Currently, in our soft launch in November, we have 50 people signing up, BCS members. I would like as many people to join this group as possible, not because I want this to be the biggest group in the BCS. That is not the point. The point of today is about how we mobilize the 60,000 members of the BCS to do something about this topic. Right, and then of course I want to introduce you to the rest of the team here. I just want to make sure that you know that there's already a team behind. But more importantly, this is not the end of it. This is only the beginning. I welcome as many of you out there who's listening in, who's not joined today, who wants to get involved. Please come and get in touch with one of us. I'm sure we'll find something for you to do. And you'll find that the whole point of today is to provide enough structure and framework and signposts for you to get involved. Okay, so I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to, and you can see here's the list of 50 names already. So let's add to this list. Then sort of makes the point earlier on about what BCS stands for. It's about making IT good for society. We must always remember that, right? And there are 4 priorities that John sort of champions, when he became president, and one of them is digital divide, which is why he's been very supportive, and that's how we managed to get to this point with his support. Right, so just like in anything that we do in the technology space, we got to start with the problem. What is the problem, right? That is a simple question, but it hasn't got a simple answer. If you look at the words that's been thrown around, you'll find many of this. Is it inclusion? Is it exclusion? Is it access? Is it inequality? Is it poverty? Is it desire? The list can go on, but it is the same thing, right? It is the same thing in the sense that we have now created a digital world through technology that on one hand, it is amazing. Look at COVID. It makes many IT leaders, IT professionals as heroes. But by the same token, you now also realize that there are many people who cannot get involved, who cannot participate. So we do have a real problem here. And I want people to understand that this problem is not simple, right? Up to now, we've been talking about devices, whether somebody has one or not. It's not about the have or have nots. There is only one dimension. It's also about the can or cannot. So this is where Julia, as our sponsor here, education skills are so key. Without that, you can't get involved. But what about another dimension? What about those who wants to and those who doesn't want to? And it could be for many reasons. And this is why we have Christy here today, because one of the topics that we got to really address and understand is inclusion. Why is it a problem for people to get involved? We have to recognize that too. So hopefully this sets the context of the problem space. And I want people to know that there are no easy answers, right? So the point of today is to get that process going, get the journey going, and hopefully, I don't want to say slowly but surely, yeah, we will get there as quickly as we can. Right, just to set the scene, and Dave will jump in with a few numbers too, right? These are some of the ones that you will see everywhere. Is from Ofcom, right? Look at the numbers. 21% of school children do not have access for homeschooling, right? 20%, sorry. and 21 of school children on free school meals. So those two numbers tend to go hand in hand. If you are on free school meals, there's also a high chance that you will also have poverty in other areas, right? Just so you know, right? And then if you look at broader, 6% of households, and 6 households do not mean just households with children or no children, right? It's just households. And then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, 80% of over 64 do not have, again, home internet access, right? We hear about those percentages, but look at the real numbers. Those numbers are not in the handfuls or the tens or the hundreds or the thousands. They are in the millions, right? Just for a moment, just imagine in this day and age, 2 years into COVID, we still have many, many people who do not have the privilege, the opportunity to have access to simple things that we take for granted, either for getting access to services or for just using it as a communications tool. So just remember that. And that's why we have created this group to try and do something about it. Right? Here is just to emphasize young and old and everybody else in between. So it's not specific to any segment of society, it's all levels of society. Now, and part of this journey too is that last year when I started asking this question and trying to find out what I can do, I realized that there are many people that's doing something already. So I want to shout out to those who have done so. But I also found that what is happening is that it's too tactical, too narrow, too short-term, not scalable, not sustainable. And when I've spoken to first one, and it became 60 IT leaders over 3 weeks, and then including BCS over 6 weeks, this is the summary of what I gathered. So this is powerful stuff. It's not just me thinking it's a problem. This is over the IT industry, and this covers 9 tech leaders communities that represents 90,000 members, right? So we have to take this seriously. This is data. This is evidence-based, not just a few of us in a small room thinking that these are what are some of the things. And in summary, it's not about the device, you can see, right? That's the most obvious one, but there's also technical support. There's also skills and education. There's also career opportunities. There's also communications, and there's also cyber safe practices. So hopefully this, in a nutshell, helps everybody to understand that the landscape is much wider and more complex than maybe we're aware of. At least that's for sure for me. And I'm on a mission first, personally, and now on a mission to socialize as much as I can, so that if I can do it with the next person, which like today, there's 39 of you here, if you know what I know, and you do that with everybody else, that is one way we can propagate that message so that we can start from a different place, rather than at the moment, we all seem to start from the same place again, which is, let's start yet another device donation campaign. Okay, so now let's go on to the panel. And I would like to get this panel to answer this question from their perspective about, how do we approach solving this problem?
Ready? Do we have Christy coming in before the panel?
Oh, sorry, you're right. Christy, maybe you can say a few words about your digital inclusion role.
Yes, I think the question we are looking to start the conversation on, which is to kind of maybe frame our brains before we jump into the panel part, is what are the issues or barriers that we might see from an inclusion perspective to enable our BCS members, our colleagues here today, to help get involved. And I would probably start by saying to start with yourself first. Inclusion is quite a broad and meaty area to explore, and quite often it starts with those assumptions we have that we may not have even recognized. So it's really important that with your enthusiasm, you start from where you are, and you are constantly thinking about how you might adapt and flex with active listening, and recognizing that we're aiming to embrace the diversity that we have within the group membership, but as well as beyond, and with the folks in the communities that we are looking to serve. And I think serve is important because it is about what those communities and those folks need, not necessarily what we think they need. And I think there's always something about that open communication feedback loop that we are looking to establish. Yes, when it comes to barriers, I often find when we're thinking about ourselves, it is, have we even thought about what we think the problem is before we jump into solutioning? So I put out a few of those ideas there. It's about thinking about who we are, where we come from, and what assumptions we might be making about others when we think about inclusion, to try and practice having an active learning mindset, or a learning mindset with active listening, and most of all, to practice respect as we engage with each other on this journey, because it is a big, wicked problem, all the things we're about to talk about. Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you. So let's start the panel Q&A now, and this is a big question, right? How will we approach solving this? And I would like each person in turn to speak from their perspective of, and this is the first time that we're all hearing it, and it will be different answers, but it's fine. I'd like to get Julia, if you don't mind, to kick us off, your view on this.
Yeah, sure.
Just before that, Julia, sorry, yeah. Freddie, could we maybe take off the screen sharing, because then
sure.
You should all appear as a panel. That's and Julia becomes big, yay! So hey,
now you can see her.
Brilliant.
Hi everyone. Great. Okay, I'll start us off. I mean, it probably come as no surprise to people that I want to talk about the education system, because the education system is already in place. And it's a way that we can, at scale, sustainably, long-term, shift this forever. So yes, there are other things that need to happen. I don't dispute that. But one of the most important places where we need to focus, and I have focused the whole of my career, is on educator skill. Because if we've got skilled educators who understand the skills that young people need, who have those skills themselves, and can deliver a curriculum that is culturally relevant, digitally inspiring, and ambitious, then we will have generations leaving school and entering the workforce with the digital skills that they need. And that's no small ask, right? And some of us, Carl, I can see you're on the call, we've been working on this for years. It's hard. And as technology moves on, you need to reskill, right? And we know this. But I would say for my input to the question is, how do we do this in a long-term sustainable way? Well, one of those ways is we need to continue to engage with that education sector, that educator community, and we need to harness the assets that we've got in our membership to sort of amplify what we're able to do locally, regionally, and nationally. And we can do that like we are at the moment with big national investments in CPD, like the National Centre. That's the biggest single investment in teacher CPD for computing anywhere in the world ever. So that is a great opportunity that BCS has got at the heart of that to influence that. But we also need to do stuff at a very micro level, right at the local, in a classroom with an individual teacher. I have been in classrooms where a 3-piece suite has sat in front of the technology and post-it notes have been put on digital display boards because teachers haven't been able to, haven't wanted to, haven't seen the relevance. And clearing those views out of the way and finding the spark of interest amongst those educators, how they make it relevant, how they get to bring that to life in the curriculum is really important. And I think, the work that we do with Computing at School and that incredible network, I wonder what could happen if we put some of that network together with this Digital Divide Specialist Interest Group, what magic we could make happen there. So yeah, that's my big idea. Let's keep going on the educators, because really, if we close the educator digital skills gap, we will close every child's digital skills gap.
Thank you, Julia. Dave, what about you from your perspective? I
mean, I agree with all of that, of course, but I think a slightly different take perhaps for me is that collaboration is the key. So as I said, I came into this actually not through BCS, really, not initially anyway, but through this perspective of social isolation at the start of lockdown. So for me, the key thing here is that the solution space here, the problem space here is not just about access to technology, although it is about effective use of technology. It's about social problems. It's about things that happen in people's day-to-day lives. There's an economic aspect to it. There's an education aspect to it, but there's a social aspect to it as well. And that social aspect is that I'm sat alone in lockdown, living alone. I don't have that many friends anywhere, and the internet was the only thing that I had that was keeping me going. But I can't do that, or I don't have access to this. So for me, the way we approach this kind of problem has to be through collaboration with other groups that have expertise in the right areas. So we in BCS have this special, this specialist group will ideally be composed of people who have expertise in the technological, the digital technological aspects of what the problems are going to be here and what the solutions are going to be here. But the other aspects of those are going to be, so as Julia said, there's an education aspect to this. Well, we don't have that specialist knowledge ourselves. We collaborate with those who do, but we don't have it ourselves. The economic impacts, the social impacts, we at BCS don't have expertise in the social impacts, the social causes, the social ramifications of digital poverty, digital exclusion. So we need to work with people who do. So for me, that's the key thing. So there's two aspects to that really, I think. One is that BCS needs to work with these others who have this expertise that we can share and use to form solutions. Internally, of course, we can have that as well. So some of the, well, pretty much everything that Christy has said so far has chimed with me, because we're thinking, well, there's a load of groups inside BCS. We have the various specialist groups inside BCS that are going to be relevant here. So there's this one, there's a Digital Divide specialist group, but the Pride SG is going to have a different take on this. We are going to see that people in these LGBTQ communities are going to have a different take. There's going to be some law aspects, there's going to be health aspects. How do we consider healthcare and digital divide? Well, we have health specialist groups. So BCS, Digital Divide, Pride, Law, Healthcare, and others are going to have to work with ourselves internally and with others to form these collaborations that are going to help us understand and identify the problems. So I mean, that's a long way really, I think, of just saying collaboration is utterly going to be the key thing here. We need to do that collaboration. We need to work out who the other stakeholders are, and we need to work with them to be a part of a wider solution.
Thank you, Dave. It's really good to hear from somebody who knows a lot from within the BCS as a member for a long time. So thank you for sharing that view. Now, Christy, over to you. Right, from your perspective, being fairly new and whatnot, tell us your experience, or what would you suggest?
I think I would add on to what Dave just said, and I think it would chime in with what Julia has said as well, especially around this idea of getting to those with the lived experience, right? So with our expertise, maybe one of the most important aspects is to be humble as we listen to the lived experiences and the needs of the problems that people are facing, and then adapt our solutions and our maybe ways of working with those communities to ensure that the solutions we propose are sustainable, that they are achievable, and where we break them down, we do that. I was really pleased to see that there's another BCS group that's launching this month. It's for the neurodiverse, and that's incredibly exciting. So, there will be many places to find your tribe, your network, those who share your experiences. It's how we can work across and work together to support each other in our ambitions.
Thank you. And then last but not least, it's my turn. So I'm going to share a few slides with you guys. Okay. Now, being a technology professional, I'm going to sort of take that perspective to answer this question, right? So how do we go about in our day job to solve a problem, right? Any problem that, in our organizations. So that is the angle that I take. So I want to just get everybody to come with me on this journey for a moment. Yeah, just for the next few minutes. Yeah, just imagine this problem that we're trying to solve. We are a startup. By the way, we are, right? Completely new. And therefore, there's no legacy, no history that will sort of hold us back, because that's one of the big challenges that we have when you hear about organization legacy. Think of this as a startup. Therefore, we got a fresh, clean slate to start from. Right, and what about the problem? Right, the problem is a ready-made real-world problem out there. It's waiting for somebody to solve. And there's a huge market for this solution, right? So I think some of you are beginning to relate to what I say, but you'll be sort of laughing, saying, yeah, but what's the point? Because there's no money involved, right? Not like a startup. We sign up because we can get all kinds of, promises of rich returns. But you know what? A large percentage of startups do not succeed, right? So we also have this real risk of trying to do this problem, solving this problem, and not succeeding. But I think it would be a greater problem if we don't even attempt to try and solve this problem. Of course, it's not about money, right? Richness can come in many ways. Richness for our fellow, neighbors, friends, our children, and also the future generation of, our own personal situation or society at large. And by the way, this is not a UK only problem. This is a global issue, global problem. And regardless, right, the issue here is the fact that through technology, it has become an enabler, right? I'm so proud of being in this industry. But then we also need to recognize that because of these two, we have also been faced with a challenge that we've got to help to solve. And one of that is that we should not let anybody to be left behind. And I do believe that it's a solvable problem. I do believe that we can do something about it. So how do we approach solving this problem, right? Here is just a guide, remember, please, this is a startup. This is the beginning. Nothing that I say today will be sort of casting in stone. It's just my opportunity to share with you what I think, right? The problem is a lack of access to participate in this world. So it's not just about the device. And the solution, as Dave and others have called out already, we need to be more joined up in our thinking action so that the solution can be more holistic, more strategic, more sustainable, more scalable, rather than the many solutions out there today that are very tactical. And even if you have an end-of-life device enough to solve for this country tomorrow, let's say, guess what? The problem will come back again because the end-of-life equipment will be end-of-life again, right? So we cannot think that we've just solved the problem. And of course, the approach is remembering not even the BCS can do it on their own, neither the government, neither the schools themselves, but together, right? Together through collaboration, Dave used the word collaboration. Here we use the word joining the dots. Joining the dots, not just with with BCS members, the 60,000 members, we have to do that first, but then also to make sure that we can also connect up with the rest of the world out there. And the BCS is delighted that we are a strong supporter of the Digital Poverty Alliance. Julia Adamson is a community board member of that. And through working with the DPA and other organizations, we can do this together. And that is the key point. And then the last thing I want to share with you guys about a framework for thinking about solving this problem is that it's beyond just the device, right? Because that's what we talk about. I want people to know that there are more than that. A device without data connectivity is an issue. So let's be aware of the fact that we also got to join up this other piece, right? And be aware of some of the signposts out there, like the creation of a national data bank championed by the Good Things Foundation, supported by Virgin Media, Vodafone, and Three UK joined only a few days ago. It would be wonderful, amazing if all the telco companies join this and we solve this problem once and for all. Wishful thinking, but I can see the momentum going there. Tech support is a big area. Skills that we just highlighted, this is an area that BCS can do something about. Career opportunities is yet another area that BCS can do about. Cyber safe practices, yet again, this is something that BCS can do about. And then this one here about inclusivity includes also inclusive design, right? We've got to make sure that we have the right app and content and the user experience for a young child versus an old age pensioner. They are two different things. And of course, last but not least, is something that everybody can do, which is if we know what we know today rather than not, we can all share with others what we know so that we start from a different place. So that is my summary of where we've got to so far. It's still a long way to go, but hopefully everybody gets a sense of the fact that there's now plenty of places that people can get involved with. This is just one of the ways. And we would love to hear from any one of you to come and join us and help us to debate about the thinking and the action, because we have to do something about this, right? And ideally to be done in a joined up manner. Any comments or questions from the panelists before we move on to the next question? No? Okay. Right, just conscious of time because we want to give people time to ask questions too, right? So the next question is this. how can you, each of you who's on the panel today, and potentially 60,000 members of the BCS, how can we help? So once again, Julia, I'm going to come to you first. What is your view? How can you help? How can we help?
So I think as a group, being ready to get behind key BCS initiatives, whether they come from the group themselves or from other groups, is kind of one of the things I think that we can all do. We're working on a new initiative at the moment, which will look to try and harness the power of the membership to, if I say, sort of support people with people, but also people with opportunities. So whether that's funding or courses or training or resources or whatever. So we think about things and network. So putting those two pieces together, I think we've got an opportunity with the things that BCS already has, but also through its partnerships to be able to piece those two things together and then target the people who need it most. And finding the people who need it most, that's where the collaboration and the community comes in, because, you know, whether that's a school or a college or a community group where those people are being supported anyway, or whether it's through health and care, social care, that's where you can find the people who need the support most and put in that sort of special combination of people and resources. And I think that's part of the key to the answer to this. It's that combination and that collaboration, because actually you can put some of these initiatives out, but can you find the people who need it most, and can you support them, and can you design it in a way that is right for them and that they can access it, and that it's meaningful to them and the context that they are currently in. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
So, let me just jump in there, Freddie, if that's all right. I think
Sure.
there was a question that was asked from one of the attendees, which is about what are we already doing? And I know Julia's probably in a really good position to be able to offer some of that because of the work that she's doing in education. So if we can just reflect that back, just to explain to people what's actually already happening from a BCS perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the National Centre for Computing Education. So this is one of the initiatives that's happening at the moment. So that whole programme is tilted towards, DFE would call them priority areas. They, you know, I think it's also known as opportunity areas, but there are particular young people who are taught in particular areas of the country where they have the least good access to good quality teaching and learning, and they make the least progress. So those particular areas, those priority areas, the majority, well, I think pretty much all of the programs that we work on at BCS are tilted towards those areas. So we are required to do more, to work in a focused way, to support those educators and those young people in those areas. So, for example, there's training and resources for teachers, but there are also platforms for young people. So there's something called Isaac Computer Science. That's an online platform for A-level students. There's also a GCSE version just being released at the moment. So there are some examples of the types of initiatives that are happening, and that they're tilted towards those priority areas. So we also work on a scholarships program, so with DFE, and this is to support people who want to train to be secondary CS teachers. Again, this is trying to find those people that need that extra support and give them the support as they go through their postgraduate qualifications, and then helping them to find their first roles as they teach in schools. We've got a partnership with Teach First. Again, they're about putting great educators into those really hard to reach areas, and working with those young people and their families to make progress. So does that help, Dan, without going into too much detail?
That definitely helps. And I think that goes back to a point that Carl Gilbertson made in the chat about schools and education being a route to really extend that kind of social capital, and that that you get from educating children via teachers about how to use digital technology and to reap the benefits of that, because it's not just about the exchange of information from teacher to student, it's student back into the family and back into the community.
Yeah, and schools, of course, they're key businesses with young people in the classroom in front of them, but schools don't just educate the child, they work with the whole family. They work in their community to transform the life chances of those young people. And so, yeah, absolutely, when you're working with schools, you're working with the people who are reaching out to those whole communities. And I think, some of our work is around policy change and the curriculum and things like that, and making progress in terms of thinking about making the curriculum culturally relevant so that you do inspire and engage young people from all groups with all points of view, and not just a single, building on what Christy was saying about not coming from the position of where coming from the position where you don't actually know, and how you take people on the journey to becoming digitally skilled, digitally enlightened, and then be able to use digital to transform their life and their career. So yeah, I think if you think about young people who are not on an academic pathway, and the skills that they need to thrive in their lives, to be able to manage their social life, to live safely, to be able to access public transport, to be able to have a social life, be able to manage their health and care needs. The digital demands on those young people is huge, and we can do an awful lot through the work that we can do with outreach to further education establishments, through schools, through health and social care, to try and reach those people, but through the people who influence them, through their influences. That's how you do it at scale, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, there were a number of questions. I'm just conscious of time, Freddie. Are we okay to ask some of the questions that are coming from participants?
Yeah, sure. I think it's good to get some questions here.
Great. So there's one question, and Chris Winter does ask a very specific and targeted question that I want to come to in a minute. But whilst we're on this discussion, I think that there's a question about, I'm paraphrasing here, but how do we achieve change at scale? And I think that should be a question that I think the whole panel gets to answer. So we've touched on it, a lot of it, and I'm getting a sense that it's about skills and about knowledge. But if we maybe go to Dave first, not heard from Dave for a little while.
Yeah, that was minutes. Pardon me. So I'm going to deliberately not answer that question because I don't know the answer to that question. So a sort of political answer, but an honest one. I don't know the answer to that one. But the opposite of that question, I think, is rather than saying how do we provide a solution that scales well, and the original question was, I really do feel political now, sorry. How do I get engaged? How do I as an individual get engaged? And I would say branches. Get involved with your branch, get involved with the BCS branch, because that at least can, if I can't encompass as an individual, if I can't encompass pardon me, how to build a solution at scale, I can at least do something locally. And then hopefully somebody else will step in the next few minutes and say, here's how you do that. But what I would like to see is a new role for the branches in a kind of hybrid, post-COVID, post-lockdown, post-real world scenario where I'll see the branches do different things. I want to see the branches do stuff that's got that regional attachment, that's got that local attachment. And that's going to be attachments to schools, colleges, local charities. We're doing stuff in Bristol and Bath to get involved with a charity called 3SG that helps other charities. And I think, so as part of that building a solution at scale, I think what I do want to see is people having something tangible they can get involved with to be a part of the solution. And I think that's going to be branches.
Great, thank you. Christy, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, and I would say that with the one benefit of having connectivity and maybe some ambition to try to connect with others, it is actually other branches that you might not have found. There's a lot more going on now. So you may find that there's a branch that is running topics or has a particular passion for something that you're interested in that you can connect with, and why not take advantage of that? I think there are many ways to get involved. And again, it starts with what comes to you. I would also add in that we aren't all experts in everything. So hopefully we bear a little bit of kindness and understanding if we make a mistake, and that happens. So a solution at scale, I think doesn't exist. I think there are going to be multiple solutions. And if I were to say, it's like a symphony of symphonies, ideally, right? Everybody's playing a part in the different parts that they do, and it comes together. But is there just one solution? I would argue the answer is no.
I love the idea of a symphony of symphonies. That's going to be my new thing. Julia, did you want to come in on that? And do you think you may have some ideas?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that message around there's just no one single solution, and this is like a collaboration of collaborations, a symphony of symphonies. And I was just messaging, sorry, I have myself off mute, so I'm really sorry if you could hear me typing, but I was just messaging Chris, who was saying about the branch that he's involved in, and whether we could get some collaboration running between the local CAS community, so that's the local teacher community, and the BCS branch locally. And absolutely, I think it's bringing that local group, those local groups together to think about, well, what is the big challenge? What are the big barriers for us in our area, and where are the gaps that we can't fill with other initiatives, and what could we do together? What's the power of these two collaborations? So yeah, collaborations is probably the answer. And I know that's tricky because that puts a lot of pressure on the communications, and it's not as easy to cut through and to be clean about some of those things. But if that's what this group can do in terms of trying to bring some clarity among that, cut through that complexity and make it easy for people to understand, like Freddie has so eloquently done with the whole digital divide issue, by breaking it up. It's the perfect computer scientist, breaking this down, decomposing the problem into something that's manageable for people to understand. Then that would be a great start, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And if I may just chime in with another one of those terms, yeah. So you may have heard me talk about community of communities, right? And the reason for that is because if you look at the IT profession, there are actually many other communities, the IET being another one, the WCIT being another, there are many of them, right? And one of the things that we should do, and by the way we have, right, is to join up currently 13 of those communities. BCS being one, it has got 60,000 members, but across 13, there are 130,000 members. So this is an example of how, we talk about scaling. This is one way whereby if we can provide some kind of a framework that enables us to be able to mobilize beyond just the 60,000 members of the BCS and also the rest, that's one way that we can scale. But we need to find the right things to do. Back to you, Dan.
Yeah. Did Dave want to come in there?
Yeah, no, only very briefly, just to continue that computer science analogy. If we think about this as engineers instead, then that gives us a better opportunity, I think, to say we need to identify that there's a problem, understand what the problem is, and then deliver a solution to the problem. So one thing we could do if we did this badly would be say, laptops in schools and everything is fine. We need to make sure that we properly, and this is collaboration again, we need to make sure that as engineers, we think of this as providing, delivering, and then managing a solution to a problem. So this kind of just continues the digital professional metaphor somehow.
Then I would add on to that, Dave. And I would say your UX and UI designers, because they're getting in touch with the people and they're listening to the people that the solutions that are being created reflect their need.
Metaphor works.
I have a bit of a confession. Because Mark West was off my screen, I'd failed to go to him before. So Mark, have you got any thoughts on this?
I think all of these points have been particularly good, but I'd like to push and drill down onto the it's the people at the end of the day, and I like the engineering analogy, but one thing we do know as engineers is that sometimes we do lose sight of why we're doing it, and we also think that we know better a lot of the time. I think Christy made a good point that we need to pick out what the local areas, or the particular, the communities we're trying to help, what do they need? Because they're, a community in Liverpool, a community in Birmingham, a community in Wolverhampton, completely different needs. as long as we can ID them, then once we pick those, pull that thread, then we can tailor each particular deliverable, if you will, to those particular areas. I think we just need to not forget the people in all of this. That ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help the people.
Yeah, I think that's. I think that is the inherent. It can be perceived as a bit of a conflict sometimes between a pull from an organisation like BCS and other organisations that are trying to deliver at scale change, and then individuals working maybe within the CAS network or working with their communities, very focused on individual delivering for individuals. And I think this is why BCS is such a wonderful organisation, because you can actually do the two, and the way we do it is by having these conversations and continuing having them, because this sort of conversation with the staff team and members isn't a couple of years ago wasn't usual, right? We didn't do this as much. I think there was definitely some sort of like wall partition between. So it's nice to be in this situation.
And there's some nice comments from Tom Crick around, co-created, co-constructed. And I think that sort of sums it up really in terms of being able to build on what Mark was saying about, let's not just think we know, let's actually do this together, because that's really important in terms of any change management anyway, because but Freddie, you put that first slide up, the access point, the skills point, and then the I don't want to, the people who don't want to, and the work that I've done with Carl in the past was full of the I don't want to, not the I can't or I don't have access. And that's actually the harder bit to solve. It's the why should I, and can I be brave enough, and will I make time to commit to this?
And it can be solved, right? Because sometimes it's a confidence issue. I remember 30 years ago when I started my uni, and one of the things that we talked about then was keyboard aversion, right? In those days, you don't have a computer per person on a desktop, but you have this issue where if you see one of those, it's like, no, it's not for me. But now the whole world has changed, right? Digital access is like a commodity. Everybody should have one, and we need to find a way to make sure that we can educate and enable people to be able to do something, right? So that's one of the challenges.
I'm really conscious of time, and Chris Winter, who's been chatting in the chat, and it makes a really, really valid and important point about accessibility. Chris, I'm going to unmute you, or I'm going to ask you to unmute, because I think it's important that you're able to ask your questions. I don't know if it's... Hi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm fine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so as everybody says, it's a big complex problem, and I've been working on this for some years, and I've chosen one thing to try and get right, and that's accessibility. And to make it very relevant to the BCS, at the beginning of this meeting, I assessed the BCS homepage against W3C accessibility guidelines. And there's 64 contrast errors, all of which seem to be to do with corporate branding, white font used on a light green background, with 14.1 million people registered disabled, a lot of those with visual impairment. Are we setting the right example in the BCS with our homepage, let alone the rest of it? By the way, a few weeks ago, I checked out the accessibility specialist group page, and that had the same sort of errors. So this is a corporate branding versus accessibility issue, I believe. And personally, I believe the BCS should set a better example.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Does anybody want to jump in on that and come back on that? I mean, I'm happy to say some words, but...
I'm also happy to say thank you, Chris, for raising it. I know we've been in contact previously, and absolutely, we want to do the best job we possibly can. We need to set the best possible example. So I don't have an answer right now for when and what we'll do, but I can promise you that we'll take it away and come back and report back to this group on progress.
I mean, from my perspective, because I suppose I'm answering because I'm a member of BCS staff, and it's a constant frustration and a little bit of shame that we haven't progressed this in the way that we want to, and the way that we have that we need to. But I think I would be really pleased if the Digital Divide Specialist Group could look at this with us, and as a piece of work around how we make ourselves accessible, and we start with some simple things around the branding. So if we can come together and say that that's a commitment, I'm seeing some nods from Freddie and Dave. I think we're probably,
especially Chris.
Yeah,
because Chris is our resident expert, right? So yeah. Chris, we will rely on you to help us.
Great. Anybody else? We've got 3 minutes. We probably need to summarize. Freddie, do you want to?
So yes, I have one final slide to share, and hopefully that represents the panelists today about how to answer this huge question about getting you and the 60,000 members involved. So let me get straight to it. And the point here is that this is something that we can't make anybody do something they don't want to do. We're not forcing anybody to, but what we want to do is to find a way where you can choose to be as light touch as you want, or you can go as far as the other extreme where you really take a lead and do something. So for example, I would like everybody to, who's on this call here, and share the message to get people to come and join the BCS Digital Divide Specialist Group, or join the Digital Poverty Alliance. They're not mutually exclusive, right? And just keep abreast of what's going on, because if what you do know, and you can tell others about what you know, that is already helping. So please do that. And that is quite easy to get to a lot of people. We would also like to encourage people to become an ambassador. So this is what the DPA is trying to do, to get you to commit and do more, such as socializing, such as using your network to tell people to, call to action about certain things and certain events. Please do that. And I think BCS SG, this SG would also do something about this too. Yeah. And then of course, we want to then take the next step, which is pledge your support, not just in words, but also in action, right? So this is the beginning of saying, I would like to invest some time to help. I may not know what yet, or it doesn't matter, but I want to start doing something, and that's good. And we want to do that. And the DPA is organizing a way for people to pledge support. But then what we would really like to do is to get many of you here to offer your help, to help work with any one of us, some of us, or drive your own initiative to make it happen, right? So if you want to support something that's going on, come and be a supporter in this action area, one of them. Or if you think of something very passionate like Chris Winters about this accessibility issue, he can be a leader, right? This is what we do in our day job. Come in here and be a problem solver. This is, after all, the best job in the world, the best part of our job, which is solve problems. So come and help us either to think about solving the problem or driving towards some action with a plan and with outcomes that we can say that we've done it. So on that note, I think the panel would like to thank everybody for joining us. Then over to you to close this session.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. I think we've had a really good discussion. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned stuff. I think everybody else has, and it's just one of those things. It's a real joy to do these things with members and BCS staff. It really is, and I think we're doing more and more of them, and we're only better for doing it. So we'll continue in this vein. We've got the policy jams, a continuous way to get in to engage with us as the policy team. So please do continue to come to those. If you just Google BCS Policy Jam, and you'll be able to see. But we'll be doing lots more work on this, and keep your eyes peeled for the activity of the Digital Divide Group, because we'll be doing lots more. Thank you, everybody.